Here's the lesson where we will discuss deriving the quadratic formula. Now this is something that I will assess you on, and I want you to be able to derive it. It's a good algebraic exercise, but it also helps us to appreciate what the quadratic formula does for us. We have a picture here that Einstein sitting on the floor, and he's not feeling too well. It says, early in his career, Einstein discovered the dangers of drinking and deriving. So I'll put a little light on it. But how do we derive, in other words, how do we come up with the quadratic formula? This is out of the book, if you look at it, and these are all the steps that would be considered important in the process of deriving the quadratic formula. Now, on this side, I have the reasons. The general equation, we divide both sides by a, subtract CA from both sides, we complete the square, factor the left side, and simplify the right. The square root property, subtract b over 2a from both sides, and simplify. That is a brief and quick overview of what we will do. Now I'm going to take us through it, and as I do it, pay attention to how I do it, to see what I emphasize as being important in showing your work, so that you will get full credit when it is your turn. We said before that we cannot complete the square if we do not have a lead coefficient of 1. So the very first thing we have to do is divide by a. That will give us x squared plus, a, plus b over a x plus c over a equals 0. Now as before, we're going to move the CA to the right side by subtraction. And that will give us x squared plus b over a x plus something new equals negative c over a plus something new to balance the equation. Now we have a an x coefficient of b over a. We're going to use that to complete the square. So if you remember, when we have a fraction, we take it times a half, which is the same as dividing by 2. And we square it. Well, b times 1 is b, a times 2 is 2a, and we square. Again, this is a b, not a 6. When we square it, we distribute the power, and we get b squared all over 4a squared. Every piece has to be squared. So that is what we will put to complete the square. Now, the left side is a completed square, so we should be able to factor it. Now, I am going to go right to this form and not write it twice. It will be x first. Plus plus means we'll have pluses in there. And we mentioned already that whatever's in here is half of the x coefficient, half of b over a. And that is right here. Before we squared it, we had half of b over a. That came from multiplying by a half. So I'm going to put in b over 2a. The right side needs to have common denominators. So I will have to multiply the second equation by 4a. That will give us a common denominator of 4a squared. That will give us, I'm going to switch the order right here. I'm going to say b squared. And this part is going to give us negative 4ac. So it's 4a times a negative c. I'm going to put it all over our common denominator. Our next step, since we have it as written as a perfect square, is to square root. Now the numerator cannot be rooted. But the denominator can. The square root of 4a squared is 2a. We then subtract. We get x equal to negative b over 2a plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Or, if you want to write it as one fraction, you write it like that. What do I look for when it's your turn to do this? I look for this part. Can you complete the square? I look for you dividing by a. So let's go, if I go in order, I look for you dividing by a. I look for you to complete the square. I look for you to get a common denominator. Now I look to see if you can square root both sides and get the proper result after rooting both sides. And then subtracting both sides to solve for x. Those are some key elements. Dividing by a, completing the square, getting a common denominator, square rooting both sides, simplifying both sides, or simplifying the root, solving for x, equals points. Okay? And that is completing the square and deriving the quadratic formula.